So in tonight's CEJA presentations, you're going to hear examples of how CEJA really set Illinois up to IRA. We're uniquely positioned to benefit from that, but we're really only going to scratch the surface of the federal bill and what that's going to mean. We're going to just dig deep into the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act. So we're going to get updates on all the pillars from the CEJA, but first we want to hear from our climate champions, Senator Bennett and Representative Ammons, and let's just give them a big hand. Thank you for your steadfast support for this community. I'll say, Senator Bennett, you drew the short straw, so I'm going to have you start us off. Will you give us a few remarks?
I was just joking with Representative Ammons. How is it in this room of experts that we are asked to explain CEJA? And I thought about throwing Lan under the bus and like, can I share my screen because he's sitting by a computer? I don't have any presentation, honestly. But I do want to point out how much I appreciate those in the room for helping get us to this place. And then, I don't know, how many of you saw the gubernatorial debate 2-3 nights ago? Okay, CEJA came up a few times, right? But there's clearly a difference of opinion depending which candidate you're supporting as to whether we want to continue it or go in a very different direction. And so the reason I bring that up is just to say there's always more issues ahead. Lan, when I was... Hey. Thank you. I appreciate that. When I walked in, Lan and I had worked a lot on the coal ash issue a couple years ago, but we already were talking about the next project. There's always something else. You've got to be vigilant, but there's no way any one group. Super annoying. Wish that happened to Darren Bailey this week. But no, we heard every word he had to say, loud and clear. But there's always another issue. There's always another threat to our environment and to our livelihoods. And so it's just so important that we stay strong, we stay united with the groups that are putting together this tonight's event. And I just want to say I appreciate that, and we will continue to address these issues as they come before the state legislature with either Governor Pritzker or Governor Bailey, and just do our best to make sure that we continue on the right path, which is the responsible one for our children and our children's children. So with that, I will welcome up Representative Ammons.
Senator Bennett evoked evil name in this space, so I gotta wipe it out. We know. Is that okay? Thank you. I talk so loud on my own, it's like I don't know about this. But we do know how important CEJA is, and the provisions that are in CEJA are nothing short of remarkable, in my opinion. We all watched this process from the very beginning, and many of the people in this room have been involved from the very beginning, from the coal ash legislation we worked on to even protecting the Muhammad Aquifer, right? All of these things were part of our environmental plan that we have, and I have to say, honestly, that we have been critical in Central Illinois leading a lot of these efforts. And so CEJA is important to me because of a few things that I think jump out at me. And no, the other guy would not support such an initiative as such of decarbonizing, because he's talking about reestablishing coal and pipelines in our state that we would not do and we would not support. The other guy is not a supporter of renewable energy and the labor standards that are part and parcel to CEJA. He's not supportive of the workforce development provisions that would include minority communities, of which we need to get more minority communities in this conversation. He's not supportive of those things that we worked hard on, the equity in the Clean Energy Jobs Act bill. He is not supportive of our faith-based communities inclusion in the Clean Energy Jobs bill. So it's pretty clear to me, if we want to continue to move forward, and this is not a political commercial, it is simply a fact that we have to move forward in progress with people who are willing to progress with us and to continue to transition us from a dirty economy to a cleaner economy, and to help people enter that new economy in workforce, in economic stability in our communities. That really, to me, is the mission of CEJA, and I am excited about seeing not just the progress that we've made thus far, but what are the things that we need to do going forward to make sure that the implementation strategy of CEJA manifests what we all want it to do. And that's the important part. So it's one thing about passing bills, that's one thing, but the implementation strategy of making sure those things become actually implemented is a whole nother discussion, and a lot of you know that. That's why you're sitting here tonight. So as we go through these slides and Senator Bennett and I look at what is outstanding, what didn't quite translate right, what administrative rules didn't kind of do what we wanted it to do, those are the things that we need to talk about for the spring legislative session. And any of those people, now this is a commercial break that I'm about to do, any of you in this room who want to continue to work with us on our environmental panel in our district office, which is right here in Lincoln Square, we will be launching that this fall. We'll have an introductory meeting with our new intern from the university, and we will follow all of our legislative initiatives and all legislation that will be environmental energy legislation introduced in the spring. So if you're interested in helping us sort through those things so that we can do offense and defense, please reach out to my office and let us know that you're interested in the environment and energy panel that we host in the district office. So with that, thank you all so much for hosting this conversation, because all of us are interested, and I think we should take this, so to speak, on the road so that we can enter in and engage communities of color around this issue, because they will have to be involved if we're actually going to transition to a cleaner economy. So thank you all so much for hosting this tonight, and I look forward to it, and I'll bring you back up, Cindy.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Alice Englebretsen. Many of you know Alice. She's been involved in environmental issues around Central Illinois, and she's the political chair of the Prairie chapter of Prairie Group of the Illinois chapter of the Sierra Club. Take it away, Alice.
Thank you, Cindy. Well, the Climate Equity Jobs Bill Act was a multi-year effort led by the Illinois Clean Jobs Coalition, which is a coalition made up of 200 climate groups, healthcare professionals, environmental justice organizations, businesses, community leaders, labor unions, consumer advocates, faith-based and student organizations. The coalition was central to the passage of the Future Energy Jobs back in 1916. That was the CEJA, 2016, sorry. This diverse coalition spent more than 3 years organizing and holding more than 100 listen, lead, share events to gather feedback and policy ideas for residents across Illinois. The work centered around a simple but urgent rallying cry: CEJA can't wait. The wait ended on September 15th, 2021, when SB 2408 was signed by Governor J.B. Pritzker, the most equitable, clean energy jobs bill of its kind in the nation, the Clean Equity Jobs Act. CEJA is a bold law that will put Illinois on a path to 100% energy future by 2045. Protect public health from pollution, provide a just transition for communities historically dependent on dirty fossil fuels, enact tough utility accountable measures, and create jobs and wealth in Illinois' Black and brown communities. Unlike other states which rely on vague goals to hopefully reduce carbon emissions, CEJA has both near-term and long-term requirements with specific dates to reduce and eventually stop burning dirty fossil fuels altogether. The wait is over, but the work is just beginning. CEJA is a comprehensive approach to moving to clean energy, with jobs and economic justice being the key component. It also includes plans to convert a renewable energy and inclusive financing, protecting energy efficiency, electric transportation, a just transition for fossil fuel communities, and finally, accountability of utilities, grid planning, and low-income relief. Thank you for coming here tonight and to learn about from the experts how these plans will improve the lifestyle by moving off of dirty fossil fuels to sustain a clean energy future. And thank you, Senator Bennett and Representative Ammons, for helping us get this very important CEJA bill passed.
Thanks, Alice. Our next speaker is Amanda Pankau, who is the Senior Energy Campaign Coordinator for Prairie Rivers Network. She works with communities who have been affected by coal and fossil fuel power plants to find energy to develop and implement policies that promote clean energy and assure a just, equitable, clean transition. And she's going to talk to us about how the solar benefits of CEJA can impact Central Illinois.
Thank you, Cindy. So I'm curious who here tonight either has solar or is a community solar subscriber. Imagine it's quite a few folks, so a lot of what you hear is going to sound familiar, and you're going to hear about existing programs that CEJA boosted as well as new programs that CEJA created. So overall, CEJA sets a target to get Illinois to 40% renewable energy by 2030 and 50% renewable energy by 2040. Prior to CEJA, Illinois' renewable energy goal was 25% by 2025, and we were not on track to meet that goal. So these new goals are going to triple the pace of renewable energy development by incentivizing wind and solar projects throughout the state. So you heard a little bit about the 3 years of advocacy it took to pass CEJA. By late summer last year, the existing incentives for solar in the state had almost run out, and our solar programs and our solar businesses that we had built up over the past few years were facing what we called a solar cliff. So CEJA increased the money that is being collected for solar programs and other renewable energy programs in the state, and we fixed this solar cliff and made some policy tweaks to make sure that we don't run up against a cliff like that in the future. So again, CEJA boosted, fixed some existing programs. In Illinois, our renewable energy goals are incentivized by something called renewable energy credits. So we have a state agency called the Illinois Power Agency that works with our public utilities to collect money from ratepayers, Ammons, ComEd primarily, and then that money goes into a pot of money, or a pot that is used to purchase these RECs, renewable energy credits, from owners of solar systems. So these can be small projects on our roofs of our homes, medium-sized projects on churches, schools, things like that, as well as large, big utility scale projects. So CEJA increased funding for all of these different projects. Also boosted funding for a program called Community Solar. I personally have a shaded roof, so I can't put solar on my roof. Community Solar is a subscription-based program where I'm actually buying a share in a solar farm down by Olney, and then Ammons is crediting my account for the energy that solar farm produces, and then I pay a separate bill to that solar farm. So we're going to see more community solar opportunities with CEJA. CEJA also boosted our Solar for All program, which is designed for low-income people and people from environmental justice communities and for the public and nonprofit organizations that serve them. So a bit more about what CEJA did for Solar for All. Solar for All used to have a budget of $10 million a year and now has a budget of $50 million a year. So again, these are projects on roofs of folks. They're also community solar for all projects, so low-income folks that can subscribe to a community solar project and save even more. And we're actually going to hear more about this from Scott Tess with the city of Urbana, who actually hosts a community solar for all project. Let's see. So there's actually a lot of solar for all projects in our area. So if you check out the Prairie Rivers Network YouTube page, we have a few stories that we've shared of a couple nonprofits that hosts these Solar for All projects, as well as a Habitat for Humanity homeowner who went solar through Solar for All. So CEJA builds on these existing programs, but also creates and funds brand new programs. So we have now a special carve out for solar on schools, so at least 15% of funding is going to go to projects at schools, prioritizing schools and environmental justice communities. We also, kind of a little separate, but I wanted to mention it, CEJA creates a public school carbon-free assessment program. So the public utilities are going to be working with schools to do energy audits, making recommendations on energy efficiency, EV charging infrastructure, solar, and more to make our schools carbon-free by 2030 is the goal. CEJA sets aside another specific pot of money for renewable energy projects that are led by equity-eligible contractors. So you're going to hear this word equity-eligible a few times, and I think you'll even see a map from Jen Walling on what equity-eligible communities are. In general, they're environmental justice communities and R3 communities, which is a designation that was established in our Illinois cannabis law. So I'll let Jen tell you a little bit more about that. But we have a specific pot of money that's set aside for projects done by equity-eligible contractors that starts at 10% and will grow to 40% over time. Finally, CEJA creates a new kind of community solar called community-driven community solar. So we say that this puts the community back in community solar. So I live in Monticello. I subscribe to a project in a different county. It only has to be in Ameren territory. This program is actually going to incentivize community solar projects that are community-owned, building local wealth opportunities and things like that. And there's a specific carve-out of money for these types of projects. So in addition to the equity-eligible contractor provisions I just mentioned, CEJA requires that 10% of work be performed by equity-eligible persons or contractors, and that's going to increase to 30% by 2030. CEJA also requires reporting on meeting some of our equity goals with a regular review to look at things like diverse business growth and hiring and requirements to modify the program to make it even more equitable as we go along. And then I'll skip over there's some labor requirements for prevailing wage. So Cindy told us about the Inflation Reduction Act and what that means for fighting climate change at a federal level. A lot of the work of the Inflation Reduction Act is being done by tax credits. One of those is a very familiar tax credit to those of you that have solar. It's a tax credit for rooftop solar. It had actually fallen to 26% this year and was set to expire in a couple years. The Inflation Reduction Act boosted that tax credit for solar back up to 30% and then extended it for a decade. So it's a really big win. And it also now can be used as a direct pay. So previously, to get a tax credit, you had to be a tax-paying body. So schools, nonprofits couldn't get this tax credit. The Inflation Reduction Act has now made this direct pay, where this 30% credit can go to nonprofits. So that's really huge. This is really small and kind of off topic, but these are other tax credits that the Inflation Reduction Act is creating. You're going to hear about geothermal a little bit from Scott Tess, so I wanted to point out especially that there is also a 30% geothermal tax credit, and the Inflation Reduction Act is creating a lot of other tax credits and rebates that I won't get into, but just Google it. Anyway, that's all I have, I think. Oh, that's for the end. All right, thank you.
That is great, thank you. Our next speaker is Christina Krost. She's my colleague at Faith in Place, and Christina was born in Detroit in the Motor City, and cars still make her heart beat a little bit faster. But gasoline no longer runs in her veins. She's gone electric, which is awesome. And she's going to come tell us about how CEJA can help us all get around in our transportation system, be cleaner and more climate friendly. Thanks.
Project, okay. I was an elementary school teacher. I can project. I'll be fine. Thank you. Good? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So as Cindy said, we've gone sort of electric. We have some plug-in hybrids in my household. We were kind of early adopters of that. And so those are some of the, sort of photos that we have of our cars. But it was, by just knowing the benefits to my community, knowing the benefits to my own family, the fact that I have a child who has asthma really kind of helped make this decision easy in our family to, have to look at ways that we can be helping others that maybe have, breathing impacts and such from cars. And so EVs are cool. We like them a whole lot in our household. And some of the advocacy that I've done around that, just personally speaking, is actually going to Ford headquarters a few years back and asking Ford specifically to do a better job of creating more EVs. Now this was pre-F-150, electric vehicles, which I never thought I'd see the day where that would happen. And so you'll see, EVs have now hit about 5% market saturation, meaning that's kind of that tipping point where people start to say, oh, I know that person down my street got an EV and they start to think about, oh, that's not so weird anymore. That's not so niche anymore. And so we've hit that point now. We can make this happen a little faster than we thought. Where am I pointing?
Should be an arrow there.
Not working.
There.
I hit that. It's not working. Okay. Please do. I broke it. Sorry.
I think it can.
Okay.
Give me just a second.
Okay, so in CEJA, we have carved out a pillar to get 1 million gas-powered vehicles off the road by 2030, which again is already happening, will continue to happen, just at a more accelerated pace, right? We do that by some vehicle rebates. A $4,000 rebate is available, and we'll talk in a minute about where you can find more information about accessing that. Now this is again just at the state level. There are also federal rebates and credits and things that are available, and so that takes that $50,000 or $60,000 car that is way out of reach for most people a little bit more within our reach, right? It also rebates the charging infrastructure that is needed to make all of this happen. And so if you are especially in an equity investment eligible community, that can be virtually free for you to put that infrastructure in your community. It also requires our utilities to file beneficial electrification plans, which will help to stabilize our grid and make all of this happen. You'll see a lot of folks, maybe on the Facebook or some such sites that are saying, they're telling us that we're just going to plug in our cars and have enough electricity for all of this. Yeah, there's plans. And CEJA helps us to plan for how we're going to integrate all of these vehicles into our grid. It also created an EV administrator or coordinator at IEPA, who, if I'm not mistaken, has already been hired, is on the job, and is getting to work on how we make all of these happen, how we make all of this policy happen in Illinois. And so that job is happening currently, right now. They will also be helping to move out the VW settlement money as part of their job as well. Let's go to the next one. So this is a very small and hard to read for y'all on the back screenshot of the page on the IPA website that shows you where to find more information about the electric vehicle rebate program, which had opened and had closed for a period of time and will be open again on November 1st and will close again January 31st of 2023. So there's another application period open soon. So if this is in your family's plan and budget to get an EV, start thinking about how you're going to access the credits for that. And that's the website up there If you Google, though, Illinois EV rebate, this is what comes up. So they make it pretty easy for you. Okay, you can go to the next slide. So again, as another portion of electrifying our vehicles, school buses is another area that we need to be focused on. These are some slides from the Environmental Law and Policy Center that talk about the benefits of electrifying our buses. I won't bore you with all the details about that, but it is better for our kids. It is better for those who have breathing issues. It is better, for our communities to not have these buses idling, for a lot of time, and our children sitting on those buses breathing in those fumes, right? So go to the next slide. There are some communities in Illinois that have these EV school buses, and there are some really big federal rebates that will make that more accessible, especially in rural districts like mine. I live in Mattoon, to be able to access nearly for free an electric school bus, which becomes like a mobile battery in your community if you use it right. So there are some EV school buses in Illinois, and we will see more roll out as the VW settlement money rolls out, but there's also federal, rebates too. Go to the next slide. I just wanted to give you a quick example. Now I know that this isn't this particular area, but again, I'm from Mattoon, which is the person who shall not be named. He's my state senator. So even in that district, we are seeing progress in this area, in the EV. What's that? in that area. So there is a brand new educational center in town that has it's an old office building, and each floor of the office building has a different kind of trade that we're teaching our juniors and seniors in area high schools, and they bus in and they get all this education. And, that seems really great. There's a childcare floor, and there's a culinary floor, and there's a leadership floor and a communications floor, and these are all really great things to be training folks into. They get certificates, they have dual credit courses, they go into these careers right out of high school because not everybody's college bound. It's really cool, right? But they have a floor for HVAC and green energy, and that the person who's directing that floor also made a connection with the local community college, Lakeland Community College, and they were able to partner with a local business to buy an EV kit to put it together to teach students from Mattoon and Arcola and Tuscola and all of these area tiny little districts. These kids are going to get a chance to put together an EV and then go out into the workforce and do that somewhere. They're going to also install a solar canopy over the parking lot with EV charging infrastructure. These kids are getting this education, and they're going to go out and enter a world into those jobs. That's really exciting to me. And if it can happen in Mattoon, Illinois, I think it can happen in a lot of places, right? And that's really exciting for our state. So I just wanted to mention that that's happening, right? And this is all because bills like CEJA are making this happen. So I think that was all that I had, and who is next, Cindy?
Scott Tess.
Scott Tess, yay!
Hey, Scott Tess has been a pioneer in clean energy as a sustainability manager for the city of Urbana, and he's going to come and talk to us about some real-life examples that he has made happen ever since before CEJA was just a twinkle in somebody's eye.
Thank you. Good evening. So it's been over 10 years. Recently celebrated 10 years at the city of Urbana. So thank you. That's over 10 years I've been doing this energy and climate work. And in that time, I've observed that from time to time, there's a little bit of doom and gloom surrounding sustainability and environmental topics. Have you all ever heard any doom and gloom around environmental topics? Yeah. I have to tell you truly, in Urbana and in Illinois, I feel nothing but hope and growth and ambition and optimism. It's really an amazing place and an amazing time to be doing this kind of work. And it's actually substantially because of the advocates and the electeds in this room that I can feel that way. I can feel optimistic and hopeful. And so I'm really appreciative of everyone here tonight. I'm very glad that my slides were just hanging out, for some of the early speakers for you all to see. Because what I want to talk about, what I want to share with you tonight is 3 different renewable energy programs that we've been doing here at the city of Urbana. The first one is called Solar Urbana Champaign. And who's heard of Solar Urbana Champaign? Yeah, it's that kind of room. So, Solar Urbana Champaign is a bulk solar purchase program. We make it faster, easier, and cheaper to get solar for your home or business. We do that with a competitive vendor selection on a limited time framework, bulk and declining block pricing, and community education. So how much faster, easier, and cheaper do we make it? Well, in 7 years, on our 3-county scale, we've installed over 300 solar arrays amounting to over 2.5 megawatts of solar capacity. So pretty good scale for distributed generation. And I have to say, I'd love to take credit for all of that, but those numbers just wouldn't be where they were if it wasn't for CEJA and CEJA. These state statutes, they just give us an angle to start the conversation about renewable energy development, and they give us the edge to make more projects financially feasible. And so it's totally crucial, really crucial. Second project I want to talk about is the other one here. We got 7 years in of Solar Urbana Champaign. That really, put solar on your roof, you're really knocking out the electricity side of your power bill, right? You've decarbonized it, you've moved it from fossil fuels to renewables. But what about the heating, the natural gas side of your power bill? That's still burning fossil fuels in your basement, right? That's your furnace. So we took the model of Solar Urbana Champaign and we just copy and pasted it over to a different technology, geothermal heating and cooling. Uses the stored stable energy or temperature in the ground as a source and sink for heating and cooling in your house. That zeroes out the heating or natural gas side of the power bill, decarbonizes it. And so we created this program called Geothermal Urbana Champaign. Same model, competitive selection of a vendor, bulk and declining block pricing, and community education. We're finishing up our 2nd year across 3 counties again. We've got 28 installations and over 100 tons of geothermal capacity. Now that program doesn't have any state incentives, but it does have a 30% federal tax credit. And maybe we'll get the state involved with some incentives for geo in the future. Last project I want to mention is Landfill Solar. So the city of Urbana owns a closed municipal landfill. The thing about a closed municipal landfill is it's not taking garbage anymore, so it's not making money. It's just a liability. We just have a bunch of buried garbage and there's nothing we can do with it unless someone here would like to buy some real estate on the north side of Urbana. Talk to me afterwards. What we've done is we've taken a liability and we've turned it into an asset. We did a competitive solicitation for a landfill solar developer, selected a vendor, and they were able to access incentives from CEJA to develop a low-income community solar array. So it's a solar array way out there. It's not connected to any particular building. It pushes the electricity into the grid, and then folks anywhere in Ammons territory can subscribe their electricity from the solar array. Now, our particular project is a low-income qualified solar array. That means the developer gets extra incentives to offer electricity at lower prices for income qualified households. So we're expanding the access to renewable energy with that project. Now, we ended up having a balance of land out at our closed landfill, so we just copy and paste it. We've done another solicitation, got another solar developer, and we're working with them to develop yet another solar array on our closed landfill. And that will be taking advantage of incentives in CEJA. And it's absolutely crucial. Both of these projects would have absolutely no chance. They wouldn't even have the legal structure, the financial structure, to do community solar if it wasn't for CEJA and CEJA. So these state statutes, these incentives are absolutely crucial to expanding the decarbonization that we all want. Now about that word decarbonization, how cold and calculating is that word? It just doesn't connect, does it? What does that mean, decarbonization, renewable energy development? What does it mean? It really means getting rid of pollution, cleaning up the air, making happier, healthier, safer, more joyful communities. It just means a better life. And so that's what this really is all about. We're expanding renewable energy. We're moving from dirty fossil fuels to clean renewables to have a better life for everybody. So I'm really appreciative of FEJA and CEJA to enable the city to be able to implement these programs. Thanks.
Thank you, Scott. It's a great honor to introduce our next speaker, who's returned to the site of her alma mater. Jen Walling cut her teeth with the campus environmental organizations, Students for Environmental Concerns. Got 3 degrees here at the University of Illinois, and then went on to quickly become the executive director of the Illinois Environmental Council, which under her leadership has expanded and grown to be a most powerful force for protecting Illinois communities from pollution and waste of all sorts. Jen Walling is also responsible for the very best dulce de leche cake I have ever eaten in my life. But she's not here to talk bacon. She's here to explain the backbone of CEJA, the workforce hubs, and inclusive financing.
Great, thank you, and thank you for the wonderful introduction. It's so great to be here tonight, and I really have the honor tonight of talking about the Green Jobs Workforce Program. There was a reason that a lot of you involved with this campaign, you were familiar with no climate, no equity, no deal. These programs were just as important to us as making sure that climate was in the bill, was making sure that we had an equitable workforce to implement the bill as well. And so I'm going to talk about some of the updates there, and I'm going to give a pitch to Deontay Moore, our Green Jobs Workforce Programs Director, who put this presentation for me together, but he's at another event tonight, so I'm here. And so definitely doing the work of talking about it. The Climate and Equitable Jobs Act and the work that we're doing touches on so many different sectors that are beyond the energy sector. We're talking about jobs that are within the energy sector, but there are items here that touch into water, agriculture, public and private industry, as well as all of the things, just solar, electric vehicles, wind, hydrogen, battery storage. So many different jobs that we're talking about. And I'm going to refresh a little bit of where we're starting with some of the equity programs. The Climate and Equitable Jobs Act really goes from getting people into job training and supporting them in that training to investment in disinvested businesses and communities and contractors. Takes the whole spectrum together to make sure that we're working towards an equitable workforce. And this, coupled with the Justice 40 Fund at the federal level, means that we're looking at environmental justice communities more than ever. And this is the environmental justice communities map, as well as our 3 areas that are in the cannabis bill. And these are both areas that are under consideration for some of the programs that are within CEJA. You can look at the EJ map, looking at the Illinois Solar for All EJ website. There's a very searchable map. There are areas in Champaign, Urbana that fit this definition. So there are a number of workforce training programs. Tonight I'm going to give you updates on some of the workforce hubs, which are really important. I'm going to have a list on the next slide. So there's the workforce hubs that are run by community-based organizations, community colleges that we're looking at. There's also the Illinois Climate Works pre-apprenticeships program that really has to do with work in the labor unions. There's also programs for people who are returning from prison or soon to be released people who are in prison to enter into job training programs. And then, of course, the Energy Transition Barrier Reduction Program that makes sure that all of these programs are successful. Some of the things that we learned in the Future Energy Jobs Act was that we really need wraparound services to make sure that people can complete these training programs. So when you're entering into a training program and you have employment barriers, making sure you have the boots you need, the books, the childcare, the transportation, so you can be successful in this program is really important. Whereas the old model, especially a lot of labor union apprenticeship programs, you're getting paid to do those things. Community college or other training programs, you might not get paid to do those things. So how do we make sure folks can be successful in those programs are really important. The workforce hubs, this is the list, 13 plus 3 specialized hubs. So workforce hubs, of course, Champaign and Danville are considered in these workforce hubs. And there's 3 specialized pre-apprenticeship hubs that are northern, central, and southern. Included some info on some of the contractor development work that's in here, including the contractor incubator program, prime contractor accelerator program, and of course prevailing wage support that we discussed in one of the earlier slides. We have all of this information on when these things are supposed to happen, but I think part of the update here, just looking at where we've gone during the pandemic, I think not just with CEJA, but with a lot of organizations hiring right now, difficult, just entering into the job market, and not even the workforce programs being difficult right now, getting DCO, the staffing that it needs to be successful in creating the workforce programs has been something that we have seen as a challenge to make sure that these are successful. DCO has hired locally here the Smart Energy Design Assistance Center to put together the training programs for all of the workforce hubs that I just talked about. And so just a call to action to all of you tonight, we really need you all involved in watching what's happening in these programs and giving feedback, giving listening sessions to these folks. You're gonna get more information, but this stuff was just announced. Central Illinois online listening session November 1st, but there's a Northern Illinois, there's 2 of them, October 24th and 27th, and Southern Illinois, November 3rd. There's a lot of different ways to interact with this program, and I know the Clean Jobs Coalition will be working with folks on ways to advocate to make sure that many voices are heard, because a lot of you maybe started this from getting involved in climate, but we need to make sure we have the workforce that can implement all of these things. So we really need you to participate in these, and we'll be handing out more instruction, but I wanted to give you that. They've also put together a timeline of where we're going and heading into early 2023. I think some of this is a little behind, and for example, the solar energy companies need to report on how many people they've hired out of the workforce training programs, and some of it may be required before the training programs really exist. And so that's going to be a little bit of conflict when we're hearing about these, because they're a little behind, but there will be hiring from these programs, they will be successful. So making sure that I just have a couple here on making sure we capture equity, and we're gonna have to do a lot of measuring on racial equity to make sure that we're hiring the people that we need to hire, that we have goals, and we're constantly evaluating that methodology. And I talked a little bit about some of these struggles, DCO lacking staff capacity, implementing the workforce hubs, some of the RFI release dates. There's also a couple of councils involved with the workforce hubs, and not all of them have been appointed yet. There is a green bank that's been created, but there's also a jobs and justice fund that hasn't been created yet. So making sure that we've got that implemented as well is going to be a challenge going ahead. But we are really excited about all of these programs and the benefits that they're going to bring to the state. I just happen to know the Clean Jobs Midwest report is coming out like tomorrow, and it'll have some information about Illinois. And I do think that this industry has fully recovered from the pandemic and is looking at pretty significant job growth. I hope there's no reporters to report that in here because it's embargoed, but you've heard that here, that there's been really great job growth within the clean energy sector within the Midwest, and we're going to see some numbers on that. That is really exciting, and we're going to see so much more, so many people entering into these jobs and careers, and I am really excited about all of these programs.
Thank you, Jen. I want to say now before I forget that the Smart Energy Design and Assistance Center has brought information about how to give feedback, and also this clipboard, which you can sign after it's over, and that you'll get updates then by email to tell you how to be involved in that process. So I hope that you'll avail yourself of that opportunity. Our very last speaker is Scott Allen. Scott Allen works for the Citizens Utility Board and educates consumers about utility options and protects us from bad actors in that field. He's passionate about helping those whose financial resources are limited, which is a lot of us, to become part of the clean energy movement and reap the benefits of it. So those benefits include lower emissions and lower bills, right? So come on up, Scott. He's going to tell us all about it.
Hi. Thanks, Cindy. So I'm going to talk a little bit about energy efficiency. Maybe the least appealing or least attractive part of this, so I guess it's appropriate that I am stuck last in this presentation. It is important though. Energy efficiency is what is going to cause us to reduce the amount of energy we need to generate from renewable sources. To kind of fight back that argument that the sun's not always shining, it's blowing. Thank you. So take a quick look at what CEJA picked up on. The Future Energy Jobs Act, which we mentioned at the top of this, set some energy efficiency goals for the utilities, told them that you have to reduce the amount of electricity that you send over your infrastructure by X amount by 2030. CEJA extended those from 2030 and beyond. Ammons, the first round, fought pretty hard to have their targets reduced even more. That kind of set us back here in Ammons territory. They haven't yet started complaining about the new CEJA goals, so that's good. Building electrification plans in these energy efficiency programs, that's pretty huge. That goes back to what Tess mentioned about decarbonization. CEJA did a lot to decarbonize the electricity generation sector and not much to decarbonize the building sector. So these energy efficiency programs are going to give us a head start, and that's sort of, I think, where we're going to move to next is getting rid of carbon because of buildings, to heat buildings, to heat water. CEJA also targets a lot of these benefits to low-income ratepayers. And we know that utility burden, the percentage of your income that you spend on utilities is increasing, and it's becoming untenable for a lot of people. So we have to deal with that in some way. We have to provide some relief to those consumers. One of the ways that we do that is target the energy efficiency spending to those communities, to those ratepayers, and also make sure that you'll see that we're going to create a low-income rate also. So you can see here some of the spending mandates that CEJA put on the investor-owned utilities. These programs now, for people that are struggling with their bills, they go into their community action agency to get bill assistance, and it's just the bill assistance that they get sometimes. CEJA puts it on the utilities to figure out how to bundle all of these programs that can help people together so that when you go to ask for help, not only do you get LIHEAP, but you find out about all of these weatherization programs that the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity offer as well. And it will target customers with the highest arrearages, and we are seeing arrearages increase. The number of people who are in arrears and the amount of that arrearage is increasing because the price of electricity has gone up considerably. The price of gas has gone up considerably also, but considerably more considerable. Also includes some health and safety measures in these programs. 15% of the weatherization budget is to prepare buildings for energy efficiency measures. So anybody who might want to take advantage of these programs, in the past, you have to have some, for example, a contractor won't come into your home and put in insulation if you have a bunch of bare wires in your attic. That's not super expensive to fix, but it can be prohibitive for some homeowners. There's a low income accountability committee. These people will get together and discuss how can we make these programs better for low income consumers and how do we target them specifically. And then they have this constant ongoing push and pull with the utilities saying that this is what we need, and let's try to drag it out of you for the next year. CEJA did a couple of things to make that easier. It put the Illinois Commerce Commission sort of in charge and having oversight over this committee, so it's not just us advocates saying that you should do this because it's the right thing to do. Now it's in the law. There's also an adjustment to the utility incentives for energy efficiency. So we're not just telling the utilities that, hey, you have to reduce the amount of electricity that you send. The way we make rates now, we're saying that you're not going to get as high a return on equity if you don't find ways to reduce that. So we're actually incentivizing the utilities to make these programs better. So the impacts of CEJA, the immediate impacts on energy efficiency, we can't see many of them right now. They're not there right now. These things are still in the implementation phase, a lot of them at the Commerce Commission. But CEJA has set in motion, I mentioned the beneficial electrification plans. Advocates and other stakeholders have been kind of trying to guide the Illinois Commerce Commission into figuring out what the implementation of this looks like. The targeted outreach and benefits, like I mentioned, we need to make sure that low-income consumers are first to take advantage of these programs, and those bundled programs that I mentioned are extremely important. These changes it may not seem like it now, you can't look out your window and see energy efficiency, but they will have a significant effect on the way that we use energy and hopefully decrease the amount of energy that we need to use. Looking ahead here, we can expect to see, with that energy efficiency, we'll move into that building decarbonization. How do we get methane gas out of our buildings? Energy efficiency is going to play a huge role in that. The utilities will start offering fuel switching incentives. They'll offer more incentives to say that if you want to go with all electric appliances, we'll give you some rebates on that. The geothermal that we mentioned, for example. We're going to lessen the utility burden and hopefully change the utility model altogether to make it less based on infinite growth and a volumetric business. We need to shrink that down and get them thinking about how they can survive and continue to make a profit by delivering less electricity. Quick public service announcement, because I am from Cub. Ammons price just increased again for electricity. Everybody in Champaign, Urbana and Champaign County is, I'm sure Scott Tess can say what the number is, but municipal aggregation. If you're not on that already, get on that. If you don't know what that is, talk to me in a minute, but rates have increased. Gas is going to get more expensive too, and we're heading into winter, as we all know. So that's all I got.
Thank you. That's our program. It's a big bill. It was hundreds and hundreds of pages, and we managed to cover a lot of it in an hour. So, yay, speakers, thank you very much. We want to offer you an opportunity to continue to stay involved, and so up on the screen, pretty in a minute, is going to be like a QR code that will give you access to a survey. We would like to know what areas you want to be continue to hear about and be involved with as the CEJA continues to roll out. So please QR the code and take the survey. Our speakers have graciously offered, with the exception of Jan, who has to drive back to Chicago, bless her heart. But our other speakers are going to be hanging around for a little while.
I can cover for Jen.
And Andrew Rain from Prairie Rivers Network can talk to you about workforce hubs until the dogs come home. So buy yourself a beer, buy your speaker a beer. Thank you to Jim and to 25 o'clock for your hospitality. We appreciate it so much. Don't forget to tip your bartenders. And enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you so much for being here.